Spark of Hope is out, and with it, a surprising new upgrade to the holocron and rules references.
We take a look at how this update will affect the game, as well as some early Spark of Hope favorites.
This is episode 136, A New Type of Control.
You have been well trained.
No. You don't have to carry a sword to be powerful.
I won't fail you.
Oh, do not.
I'm not afraid.
There is no try.
We are back for another week of the Chance Cube. I feel like I start every episode that way.
It's okay.
But,
at least you're consistent.
I mean, it's like a thing, so now I guess I have to. Spark of Hope is out. An exciting time. A new set is always an exciting time. The creative juices are going. I feel like more so now than ever, the possibilities in deck construction are limitless. And we're in this great exploratory phase. Yet we're like just a month out from the Continental Grand Championship, or whatever they're calling it.
Yeah, you're 3 weeks away.
So lots and lots of testing and adjusting going on, and then we got some new news recently that's changing all of that dramatically for some of the early favorites in terms of Spark of Hope decks. But before we get into all that, Kim has a new dog.
I do. So we did end up, I think if you guys watched the show last week, we talked about that we did a meet and greet. And we did a home visit on Wednesday, and our crazy little fat corgi got along pretty good with her. So I had to kick her out because she was bound and determined she was going to hang out in here tonight. And she absolutely would have tried to get up here so that you could all see her. Because she likes meeting people, and she's pretty sure that everyone on this planet was put here to pet her. So I have 2 divas in my house now that believe that. They may just take over. I don't know.
Is one of your husbands?
But her name is... no.
Okay.
Shockingly, no. He's very undiva-ish when it comes to that. But the 2 dogs think that this whole village was rolled out for their benefit. And that everyone that walks down the sidewalk should pet them. And if they don't, they're quite offended. We didn't go with Star Wars names. We thought about it. Because the corgi was almost Leia Corgana when we got her. Like, we almost called her Leia Corgana. Get it? It's punny. It's punny!
Yeah, it's okay.
But her name is Waffles. So we went with Maple.
Maple and
like
waffles.
maple
I
syrup.
like it. No, it's good.
So we did. So we've been adjusting. So that didn't... I unfortunately missed our draft Friday night. I completely intended to go, and we got a call from the rescue while I was at work on Friday, asking to change the scheduled time for us to pick her up that evening, which was exactly when I was going to be at the draft. So Mike Ohio Hill held down the fort, and I think... I don't know if he's putting an article together on that, but I know he tried some really cool... he was able to pull Kylo Ray Elite. He told me he was very excited about that. And I've seen a lot of people...
in a draft?
I think...
Oh, no.
No, I
his
think...
polls.
No. I think he just got...
What?
So they did some open play at some point in the evening, too. So he's got to play around with that. And I look for... he'll have a deck analysis on that before too long. Because I know Zach from Team Covenant was also... Oh, shh. Mike, don't... Watch out, man. I know Zach from Team Covenant had mentioned that he had like 5 Kylo Ray decks going too, so.
Very cool. Excellent. Yeah,
Mike is listening to our show while he writes, so.
While he writes about Kylo Ray, hey, it works.
I'm excited to see that deck when I can make it back up to our local shop for some play.
Yeah, if you haven't hit the blog recently, there's some good stuff out there. I know some great community building articles. I know, and Mike has been working on some new Spark of Hope things. If you want some good deck ideas out there, some of his early favorites that he wants to try. Obviously, he's got his Kylo Ray that he's playing with, so that's awesome. And I know Cecil's working on another piece. We're taking a deep dive into the newly minted Entourage Gaming, which is the product of the combination of Sons of Mandalore, and the chat's going to tell me what the other group was that combined with them. I'm blanking on it.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. And you made me blank too.
Sorry.
Yeah, Sons of Mandalore.
And the other one.
It's right on the tip of my stupid tongue. Chat, save me. Save me quick. Oh, for Pete's sakes. No, hang on. If they're not going to help, then I'm going to have to.
Anyways, so lots of good stuff going on. Lots of great content coming out. A lot of other content creators are just pouring out content right now. It's almost like there's a renaissance, a golden age, if you will.
Yeah, I will say I saw that Your Destiny got all of their... again, I swear those boys don't sleep. And I'm sure they have some ladies there too. They don't sleep. And so they put out all their articles covering the entire set. So they pushed the rest of those out, I think, earlier this week. And it's cool. They break it down by color and faction. So neutral blue, red hero, that kind of stuff. So there's some great articles over there. Kudos to them because they put out great content, and I really don't know if they sleep.
Well,
I broke
they're sleeping while the show's going on because they're not watching.
Well, they're like 12. I don't know how many hours they are.
Not 12. Japan's 12.
Oh.
They're probably like 7. 6 or 7.
Wait a minute. I'm in this group. What is happening?
What are you
All right,
doing?
someone still needs to save me because...
Matt Scott's already saved you. Outer Rim Smugglers.
Thank you. Good Lord. Apparently I'm not in the Destiny group anymore. I don't know. Oh, maybe that's the
Kim, you
bad
have something
one.
to tell me?
No, I'm like logging into it going, why is it asking me to join? But I think that's the one that went to people took over and then other people took over and then they eventually, no, maybe that's not it. This has a lot. I don't freaking know. Huh. Things Kim learns when she looks on the internet. I don't remember not being in that group, but maybe they kicked me out. I don't know.
Maybe. Anyways, shall we jump into the news, or do you have anything else to add?
I have an owie because I'm a dork and burned myself on a pan, and I'm extra whiny about it tonight. In case you're wondering why, that's why I'm whiny because I burned my.
And let's get to the news.
Let me take that back, huh? You'll find what you need.
Spark of Hope is out. That's kind of newsworthy.
I feel like, and maybe it's because I had a lot of other stuff going on and I didn't get to play as much Convergence that I feel like Convergence came and gone so quick.
I mean, it was the
like
shortest. It was the shortest time frame between release of sets was Convergence and Spark of Hope. It was very short. And Convergence didn't have any major events. I mean, there were some GQs, but there was nothing.
Yeah.
It came out after the regionals and now there's another set before we get into like the big event season. So
yeah,
it's fair that we really didn't see a whole lot of Convergence.
That's true. Whoa, I did find it. No, you cannot put important updates on my PC right now. I saw FFG Organized Play actually sharing winners from a GQ, and I can't remember where it was, but I thought it was odd. Not bad. I just thought it was unusual. I guess knowing how I normally soapbox, I realized I needed to clarify that. I've just never seen them do that before. I think that it's a great thing that they do. I thought that was cool that they and I'm assuming this might have been a GQ that maybe they had a presence at or something. I've just never seen them do that before, and I hope they continue to do that consistently.
Right.
Instead of, hey, here, like, because I feel like if you do it for one, you gotta do it. That's my mom. That's my mom coming out. If you share one person's GQ photo, you should share somebody else's. But I thought that I wish I could remember. I'm sure I could find it real quick if I looked. I don't know. Maybe I'm not in that anymore either. Maybe it was organized. I don't think it was Europe though. But I thought that was a nice, cool thing that I just wish I could remember where it was.
I mean, the organized play team has definitely made some changes in terms of the way they're communicating and the way they're
so too.
Sharing things. I mean, they've gotten really more active on Twitter, I've noticed, responding to people, and they are utilizing the local Facebook group to. I'm not necessarily say share information, but Matt Holland's often on there asking a big question, or soliciting information or sharing. Like, I mean, he's the one who shared the press pass stuff that way.
Oh yeah.
So it's great. They're reaching their fans where their fans are at, as opposed to asking us to go somewhere where they're not even. They try to use their forums, and I just don't think their forums are well attended that much anymore. But I don't know, because I'm never on them. So maybe that's a falsehood. Maybe they are actually well attended, and I just need to read them more often. I don't know. Anyways,
keep up the good work, I guess, is where I was actually going with that.
Something we didn't really something we haven't really talked about, something we didn't really expect with the release of Spark of Hope, came a update to the rules reference, which was a bit of a shock.
It really was. And I threw out, if anybody follows the Facebook page, it was my honoriness that posted that, and I threw out a non-Star Wars reference whenever I posted it. I said that rules reference came out at ludicrous speed.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like tangentially Star Wars. It's like inspired by Star Wars.
I don't know. Someone else did comment and caught where it was. It just made me giggle that day. I need to chuckle. That was lightning quick, though. Like, it was. And I did see somebody make the comment of, if you're going to release a rules reference that close after you release it, why, like, the question was, why didn't you catch that in playtesting? And they haven't responded or anything. And I get the sentiment of that question, too. And we've talked about that on the show before. And at this point, they had to have at least caught some of it in either late playtesting or something, because this was out before Spark of Hope even had a chance to be out in the populace to start causing any kerfluffle. Or
they're actually, and it's kind of counterintuitive since they're so much against TTS, but there have been people playing with Spark of Hope spoilers for a little bit now.
That's true. Since they were spoiled and they were able to get them all out there. Yeah.
And so people have been chatting about some of these combos that they feel like are not doing well. So anyways, it was a bit of a shock. Now, of course, the update to the rules reference itself, there's not been a lot of talk about it, and there's not a lot in it that's like, really crazy. I mean, one of the things we kind of expected was they clarified the uniqueness terms, because I think the question that came about, C-3PO has existed both as a support and now as a character, and uniqueness does cross types. So they've clarified that, so no one can raise the question. You can't have a C-3PO support and also a C-3PO character.
And that seems logical to me. Like, I think that's the right call.
For sure.
Because I'm thinking thematically, but how could you? I mean...
They added a condition during the roll-off. So during your setup phase, when you roll off for control the battlefield, they added a condition that if the roll-off cannot be determined, if the highest total cannot be determined, then you use random selection to determine who gets the battlefield choice. And so I can only imagine that's because it is feasibly possible to have an entire character team with no dice.
That's what I thought. So when I first read this, I was like, what the heck? They just roll until somebody gets a higher number, because I wasn't thinking about it. And so it took me a minute, because I'm like, there's no way that for 35 minutes, two people are going to roll the exact same number over and over and over again. And then it clicked. I thought it was fair that they clarified that, so that if I brought a non-character or no dice, but my opponent had character die, that I didn't automatically lose the roll-off because I didn't have die.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So it's good that they thought that out and clear, because I'm sure that question will come up at some point.
Yeah.
Maybe not in competitive play, but...
They added a couple terms under the terminology section. So diceless card, obviously a card that has no matching die. I'm assuming that there are going to be cards that reference that, or the reference to diceless cards. And then the reference... It's odd they added the word term free. When a card or die is played or resolved for free, decreases cost to 0. So that's... I'm assuming that means if you're referencing a card's cost and you played it for free, that the cost is actually 0? Is that even a thing? Or am I reading that wrong? That's probably poor wording, right? When a card or die is played or resolved for free, it's not permanently decreasing its cost. It's just I'm that was a weird term for
Right.
me. I'm not really sure why they felt the need to write that in there.
And maybe there's just more that they saw that was going to come up. Because there's enough stuff that you can decrease the cost of a card down to 0.
Mm-hmm. Right. I don't know. They didn't.
I don't know.
Yeah, they did make an errata to the Spirit of Rebellion card Aftermath, which is kind of funny. After a character is defeated, you may exhaust the support to gain a resource. That was the support that, as characters were defeated, you gained a resource every time someone was defeated.
Okay.
I think in an infinite format, with some of the cheaper characters and reviving of characters, that was just going to be kind of a potential for crazy resource generation. So
Okay.
now it's kind of nipped that in the bud, which is interesting that, they kind of let Infinite play out itself for a little while, and now they're like, okay, we kind of need to do something about it. So I don't know. And then of course they brought in some clarifications to Spark of Hope cards, to the wordings and to the play of them.
Yeah, there were a few of those.
Which that was also a surprise. It was like 6 or 7. And
I thought in that short amount of time you felt that like you already need to reword these.
Yeah, who knows? So, I mean, that's kind of the essence of the rules reference itself. Nothing that's really going to change the way you play the game. Nothing that's going to affect the casual player in any sorts of means.
Yeah.
It really, yeah. Not the most riveting rules update we've ever had. But
Nope, just super quick.
super quick, and it was here when it came out. The question, I wonder if they're going to have any more updates over the next couple of months. I'm sure someone's going to find something, right? Because we know that FFG's playtesting structure is, I don't think it's the most robust.
Yeah.
And which kind of leads some of these really competitive groups to continue to come up with combos and deck concepts that kind of defy or the playtesters themselves don't see. And because I would imagine that playtesters don't get all 160 cards and say, what can you do with this? You went silent again. Why'd you do this? Come back.
You may have this lot over here. You missed the combo. Which I guess, I'm sure there's logic behind why they do that, but then at the same time you're missing combos that that otherwise you would potentially expose prior to releasing the set.
Right.
I mean, I know CCG is, well, it's not that new of a territory for them, but I found it interesting that when I read, so the article that said, hey, we've done these new updates was an article written by Jeremy. And he mentioned in it towards the end that all of these changes were effective immediately.
Which is unusual.
And I went, well, isn't there normally like a little bit of time? So I just thought that was a different, an interesting choice of words. And so I didn't notice. I mean, would these still have the same 11? I mean, if Jeremy says immediately, does it not have the X amount of days for a normal holocron would have to go in effect?
He says immediately, and it is now. I mean, they want to get these out. I mean, there's nothing major happening in the next 10 or 11 days that this would affect.
That's
anyways. I don't think
probably
there's
why
any
it makes
GQs.
sense.
There's
Yeah.
nothing. It's just go ahead and do it. I mean, they know that. I mean, if you've seen from the stores who post, like most time there's a rules update, they go into effect immediately for local stores anyways. I say, what's the point in going with the old one? Because a lot of people use their local store. I'll say a lot. There's a percentage of the population who use the local store to prepare for the next thing, to play test. And so why would you go with an older rules reference when you can play with the new one?
Yeah. Well, and then you get that extra time. I mean, you just...
So, from a news standpoint, that's kind of the major event that's been happening. A lot of folks are just pouring through their Spark of Hope boxes. There's been a lot of unboxing videos and live streams, and everybody. This is the height of trading season for.
I feel like at this set already, you've watched us open packs. You understand what it is. Like, it's not quite as exciting as it used to be.
It's not.
It's still fun for me to do, but like from a live stream standpoint, like although it's still, I mean, it's still kind of what are they going to get? What are they going to get?
Sure. I think because the whole set gets spoiled, the kind of pack opening thing has gotten a little less exciting, and there's not the value, and the value of this set is actually pretty low
so far. Mm-hmm. And some of that may change once stuff finally starts hitting play and people find that card that everybody wants in their deck.
Yeah.
Because I know we've had a couple of questions like about the price watch, and really we're reliant on the stores to get those cards up on their website, and it usually takes a couple of weeks for those prices to settle in. They're always going to be high the first few days, and then they kind of settle in after 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
3's kind of stretching it, I would say, but
for sure. But I know, let's see, the Game Haven and Kingwood Hobbies and House Rules Gaming and Untapped Games are all loaded onto the Price Watch currently.
Cool.
And there's some more that are coming. So, cool stuff. I'm trying to get cool stuff up and running. But we'll keep adding the stores as they keep adding singles, try to see where, I mean, singles prices they don't always determine what the meta is, right? Sometimes it's, Darth Vader was the highest card for a long time, and he was not the height of the meta even when he was around.
Right.
But he has a lot of casual appeal too. So I think there's that element. R2-D2 and C3PO are currently the running favorites for this set. And beyond that, I think the popular cards are the rares. The legendaries are a little kind of lackluster as a whole for this set.
And I feel like when we kind of went through them, it didn't feel as strong a set of legendaries of what we've seen in sets past.
Yeah, the strengths evened out a
and
little
that
bit.
may still be yet to be determined, but it seemed very thematic this go round.
Yep, for sure. So we're going to jump into our discussion, and we're going to break down the holocron updates, which really, I believe, is the most really thrilling thing that's come out of this whole bit.
But you know what I always say, speak softly and drive a big tank.
So
with the release of the rules reference, we also got an update to the holocron, and we've never really dove into the holocrons really specifically. Now we've got 3 fully functional holocrons, one for each of the different formats, standard, trilogy, and infinite,
which is cool.
Which is great. And I think enough time has passed, and they're sort of coming into their own as to what's in them, what is included, and for competitive and casual players alike. I mean, it's a critical document to be able to reference, probably almost more so than the rules reference when you think about it. Mm-hmm. So we're going to take a look starting at the standard holocron. This was updated yesterday, 7/8/19. And so the holocrons themselves have, they now have 5 parts. They used to have 4, and they now have 5. So I think that's a pretty important thing to realize. So eligible cards, for your casual player, this is a great way to always say, these are the cards that I'm able to play with from these sets and what the icons are. The one thing they don't really say in here, which I believe they do say elsewhere, is that if a card has been reprinted and is functionally the same in a current set, then you can utilize that card in the gameplay. So like First Order Stormtrooper, your Electroshock, those cards that were in older sets that are now legal again. You can use the old version. There's no reason you can't. But eligible cards very makes a lot of sense. But you always want to reference this, especially when it comes to something like the 2-player starter, right? 2-player starter, your rivals, your allies of necessity. These are ancillary to the main sets, and sometimes if you're not familiar enough with the game itself, if you're newer to the game, important pieces to remember. I was just helping out someone the other day, local, who was wanting to get out to some local tournaments but wasn't sure about rotation. And there's some great resources right out there. Pretty much every major content creator has some sort of rotation guide, some sort of legality guide. But I always reference back to the holocron. These sets are the ones that you need to worry about. And I think that also, when you think about organizing your cards, organize them by set is always a way to go,
Oh, yeah.
especially if you're looking at rotation, or you're gonna have to reorganize them every time rotation happens. That makes a whole lot of sense. The second section is the balance of the force. I'm really pleased that in standard format we only have one card currently on the balance of the force list. I think the goal is to eventually not have to have this list for a standard format. The designers get things the way they want. Captain Phasma from the 2-player set was balanced to 10-14. Balance, I think, can sometimes be I don't know. It's a barrier for new players.
I think so too.
I know we've talked about this before. Balance, introducing the idea of a balance of a force for someone who's just got a whole swath of cards and doesn't know really what they're getting themselves into. You have to either constantly reference this document or remember these point adjustments. And
that's not easy. I mean, it's like I know that there are some of you out there that I could probably ask what somebody's point value is. There's a good shot you're going to remember what. But I would say, generally speaking, because they're so close together, that's really hard.
Yeah, for sure. So having the balance of the force, for the casual player out there, I think it's important to have all three of these holocrons printed out, especially the standard, to remember that a card like Captain Phasma, whether or not Captain Phasma is in the meta, or if you're playing with him, it's her, I should say. Excuse me, ma'am.
She'll come kick your patootie.
She will. And when set 10 is released, which is not the next set but the set after, the next base set, Captain Phasma will rotate out, and maybe we'll actually have a standard format with no balance, which would be really nice, I think.
Yeah, maybe once they get more settled in with that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Errata, is a section of the holocron that always talks about cards that have changed the way they function. And I don't know if this is as much of a barrier as Balance of the Force, because I think when you hit an errata, you realize that this is a card that's going to do something slightly different, so easy to remember. I'm not sure they're very happy that there are currently 7 cards on the list.
Yeah.
And some of them are fairly new. 3 convergence cards.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know Jeremy continues to push the design envelope, and I'm wondering if he feels like Convergence got pushed a little bit too far. Be a good question to ask him in the future.
Yeah, I would agree. That would be a good question to ask him, because again, it goes back to like, how did you not? If you have to put that many on an errata, then what step in your process are you doing too quickly to have not caught this beforehand?
And, we're not
sorry, but that's
true. And we're not
privy. And I know that it's a high demand to push that stuff out. I get that. I'm not dumb, but.
And we're not privy to their playtesting timeline, because, you could ask, when you playtest Convergence, are the playtesters aware of Across the Galaxy and Way of the Forest, or how far in advance? Because we know they're designing, last time we talked to Jeremy, which was 5-6 months ago, they were already designing set 10 and looking at set 11.
Yeah, he couldn't tell you what deck he was playing because it didn't include cards that we know about.
So, something like Watto was maybe designed potentially before the support swarm came in play.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, and Jeremy's he was a world champion of Netrunner more than once before he became a designer of Destiny. So he has a background in this type of card game to, I think, look for some of those. So, you raise a very good point. Some of this may have already have been in motion. And now, we'll see less of this the deeper we get into the next couple of sets. Because
I think, early on in Destiny's life, resource generation was very challenging. It was very hard, and they've inadvertently swung it the other way. Right, Snoke was not intended to generate resources, and yet here he is. That has changed, of course. Now Snoke can only power action die showing damage, and the same thing with Watto. Right, Watto is a resource generating monster. and who was unable and whose dice was unable to be removed. So like being able to always roll out resources almost all the time, and now you have the ability to control them, which is great.
Yeah, and you should.
Yeah, you should be able to, like, there should be some mitigation. I think anything that's like it's just almost like when you go back to the dagger shoot.
The one that was unblockable damage?
Yes, Vibroknife.
Vibroknife
was such a, like...
I liked that card a lot.
Anything that modifies, like, everything, right? It modifies so much stuff. Is very challenging to deal with. And I think, Watto saying, you can never remove these die. It's like, really? I can never remove them?
Yeah, so, I think that it was a good move to make that blue.
So... And I think, they continue to want to make this game kind of exciting and interesting. And every time there's a big swing in terms of design and power, and it generates more excitement around the cards. And then, of course, your hyper-competitive players come out and say, this is the worst thing they've ever done because it's so broken. But it's fair. At some point, it is.
And actually, I'm going to say his name wrong in the chat, but CM Trey 9771 points out that some of it could be that they're not looking to ways to break the game, and they're making sure that cards are playable. And that's a very valid point. We're looking, I think, once it gets out into players' hands, I don't know that we're deliberately looking for ways to break the game, but somebody's always looking for that loophole, you know what I mean? Like that.
They're looking for a way to win.
Yeah, exactly. So
they want to win.
A great point.
That
buzz. There's a buzz somewhere near. It's not my sound. It's somewhere outside. So I apologize if you're listening to this and there's a weird wee in the background. I don't know.
That's just in your head.
It could also be that.
Something that was added to the last version of the holocron was the character subtypes. Jeremy's been pushing subtypes so much, especially with Convergence, bringing this type of gameplay in almost to the point where you can't not acknowledge subtypes of characters and cards themselves with as many events and other things, either spot a subtype or give you benefit with multiple of the same subtype. And I know, Kim, you talked long and hard about this when this came out last time. If Balance of the Force is a challenge for new players, character subtypes is...
it's overwhelming for somebody who... we still have a lot of new players coming into the game. I mean, it's... I just saw somebody share the, how to get started guide, because there's been a lot of people pick up the game and join in the last set or so. That's a lot that is overwhelming to look at. I was fortunate enough to join this game at the beginning when there was one set, and you learn a little bit. It just builds on itself, so you got little pieces at a time. I felt like that for some players is drinking out of the fire hose. It's just that's a lot.
That's a lot. And we're not looking at the big list, right? This is just the standard list. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 12, 13 characters that they added a subtype after it was released. Mostly Legacies cards. Legacies in 2-player box. And 1, 2...
I get why they don't reprint it. I mean, that's not cost effective either, but good lord.
I mean, and some of these are relevant now, right? So the Apprentice characters.
Sure.
So you have Kylo Ren, you have Anakin Skywalker, you've got Luke Skywalker from the Legacies. You've got Scavengers and Sith, so having Maul as a Scavenger can be relevant. Poe Dameron as a leader. Rey as an apprentice, right? So these are subtypes that are actively being designed for in the current set. And if you ever want to go back to these older characters, you could make them work in a new way, which is really kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's just another layer for you to kind of digest to get into deck building. And now there's some very skilled deck builders out there, and this probably isn't as hard for them to pick up if they play to their CCGs. Just kind of have a knack for that sort of thing. But for your run-of-the-mill casual player who doesn't, It's a lot. It can be very overwhelming. I'm glad that there's at least a sheet somewhere that I can go, but at the same time, I'm not gonna, if I'm playing in that format, I'm not gonna go look up my character pairings either. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not afforded the time necessarily to start a game to be able to do that. Good Lord.
And that brings us to the fifth section of the holocron update, and this is the latest, and this was like the surprise, we're doing something new section. And this kind of goes back to, like, you can tell that Jeremy gets frustrated with erratas. And FFG would prefer not to use them. They know what a barrier erratas can be for new players coming into the game. So instead of changing the card types, they're changing deck building rules, essentially. Using the restricted list to give them a way to eliminate combos that are deadly in their design and unfair, but doesn't change the functionality of the cards themselves. So,
right. Which is nice. And I feel like the community has been saying that there was a need for something like this for a while.
So it's not saying... I mean, you can look at various different CCGs and the way they've handled these kinds of things, right? You can have some CCGs would say, well, here's your banned and restricted list. These are the cards you can't use. These are the cards you can only use one copy of. Fantasy Flight with Destiny has decided to go with a restricted list to say that anything on this list, you can only use one. You can pick one of these cards, and you can have it in your deck, but you can't have any of the others. Which...
I wonder... Go ahead. Yours probably makes more sense, and then I'll... Yeah, you're fine.
Well, I mean, I posed this question to the Chance Who Hangout as well. If this list continues to get longer, you may be invalidating certain pairings of cards that are not broken, that are very viable.
That's just what I was going to say. We were thinking the same thing.
That's why we do a
but
show together.
To that point, so I wondered if... I'm glad that you said first. So my thought is, at some point, do they become a group? So within this restricted group, or restricted list, there is a grouping. So case in point, we have these cards that are C-3PO, Military Camp, Order 66, and Rebel Trader, is what's on the restricted list right now. Because they all combo together. So do you later... As far as I know, they all combo together. So do you later, their group, so you can only have one from this group. But now I have another group in the restricted list that I can only have one copy. I know that's a lot more work on FFG's testing end. But to your point, otherwise you're just going to put a whole big group together on this list. And those two cards don't have anything to do with each other. What difference would it make if I played blah blah and on the same? Because I don't know, these are future cards. What difference would that make? So I would almost think there has to be some sort of grouping that, they kind of... Confusing. I will absolutely say so. But I don't know how else you avoid that scenario that you mentioned of just putting a bunch of cards on a list that I can only have one of if they don't mean anything to each other. So that's...
I would have to imagine they probably had this discussion when they released this.
I would assume so. Boy, do I hope so. I would assume.
You already have...
They proved me wrong before.
In a way, you already have combos on here that, like, it doesn't matter if they're together, right? So, and really it's Military Camp that's kind of the big sticking point for me. So C-3PO Military Camp, that's the combo they're trying to avoid. With Military Camp being able to power action two of the same type of card, allow you to activate both of them, so kind of comboing C-3PO with another droid and making a deadly situation where you can just get all your dice in kind of a perfect setting. And then Order 66 plot with Rebel Trader is very unfair as a pairing. But what you're saying is now that Military Camp cannot be your battlefield if you have Order 66 or Rebel Trader. And that doesn't matter at all.
What does it matter? Yeah.
Which is, you ideally what you want to do is you want to... I think eventually they're going to have to go this route, is you're going to, like you said, pair the cards up that say you can have this or this.
Yeah, because it's 4 cards right now. So at the end of the day, is it impacting a huge deal? No, but at the same point, I'm already running. This is only going. I'm sure that you don't want half a set put on a restricted list. That's not fun for anybody. So I would hope they would use this sparingly. But I mean, 4 cards in one set is a little. I guess that's not fair. 4 cards put on here after. Okay, never mind. Count, Kim. 2 cards from one, so you get 3 sets represented here on the list. That's a little better, but that's still.
Right. And Rebel Trader is only on here because of the combination with Order 66, right? Military Camp's only on here because of what it allows C-3PO and other droids to do. So
it shouldn't impact that. If I'm gonna, and then I guess they'll go. Well, if you're gonna play Military Camp, you're not getting any of those. Eventually, as this list gets longer, I think that's why they can get away with it right now with 4 cards.
Sure.
But
and of course, C-3PO and Order 66 and Rebel Trader can't be played together because of the same. Because of villain versus.
Son of a diddly.
What?
I just occasionally freeze.
I occasionally freeze too.
It's not in your state. Well, no, that's true. Florida occasionally freezes.
Once a year. CM Trey brings up a good question that I'm sure a lot of people will have in terms of draft. You have to remember that these holocron updates, these restricted lists, are only for that particular format. There is no restricted list for draft. All the deck building rules still stay the same. If you want to draft 3PO and Order 66 on the same team, that's fine. But we're strictly talking about standard here.
And I think, not say it'll happen, like in draft. Like somebody will get that, but it won't happen as often as going to a standard event and every unit.
Yeah, it is very unlikely.
Because you have to hope that you have to open both of those, not in the same grouping, to get them.
Right.
We're out of the same pack, which I don't think you would, but yeah. The chances of that, possible, but not as likely. But that's good. That's a good point to bring up, though, is that that won't impact the draft.
Right, for sure. So beyond standard, right? So each of the holocrons got an update this time around. Trilogy got updated. Trilogy now adding Spark of Hope, which is great because I think a one set format is very challenging, but now having Spark of Hope is great. The Trilogy format only has eligible cards, errata, and restricted lists. There are no balancing of the Force. And there is no, there are no added subtypes because, of course, this is Convergence was the beginning of subtype world. Right. So,
Trilogy is a great place to start if you're new.
For sure. And I think more and more places are doing Trilogy events.
I think it'll grow, to your point, now that there's more than one set. Like, I could see that I could see there being a little more interest in Trilogy now. It's a little more interesting to choose from. One set, we knew that from Awakenings, is not the most exciting option that you can have, and they're going to run into that problem with Trilogy every time they do a rotation.
Remember Worlds when it was just Awakenings?
And everybody played Vader Raider?
Yeah, or the Phasma Trooper Balatik or something.
Yeah.
Yes, those are the days.
Those were the days. Yeah.
Unfortunately, the Trilogy format does have that C-3PO military camp combination that they're trying to avoid. And of course, this restricted list feels just fine because it's just got the 2 cards. So they're breaking apart that combo.
Way more sense.
It feels great. Trilogy format doesn't have to worry about Snoke or any of the crazy stuff. Just the 3 erratas on there. And then it's Trilogy, again, like you said, it's the most accessible format for a new player. I wish more local stores would do it to introduce new players to the game. But
I think Draft and Trilogy are your best 2 entry points as a new player. Draft can be a bit overwhelming if you're like, I've never done this, but it's a little jumping into the deep end of the pool. But everybody's got, I mean, if you have a seasoned player there who is used to deck building, they may draft a little stronger than you do, but they're still at the mercy of what the person next to them has. So it balances things a little bit better, that everybody's a more equal playing field, not a totally equal, but a more equal playing field.
Right.
And it gives you an opportunity to see those cards in action and go, oh, I didn't start seeing those combos like that. So then you can go back and deck build because you've got a little exposure to some of it.
For sure. And the older a set is, the cheaper it becomes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. It's not Magic where
I've got
it gains value over
I've
time.
got some extra. Right. I've got some extra Awakenings and Empire and lots of good stuff if anybody's looking.
Speaking of those older sets,
because I'm never playing this format.
Infinite is a thing, right? It's a format that is the wild, wild west of Star Wars Destiny.
I thought I would. Maybe I will, but right now I still stay away. It's just too much.
So I find it interesting that Infinite format feels a need to have an eligible cards section. Like, isn't everything eligible?
I'm assuming they just followed suit with all the other holocron consistency standpoint. They all look the same, but fair point.
I mean, let's be honest.
Eligible cards. All of them. That's all they really needed to walk in there. Unless otherwise noted below.
Now, we did talk about this when the Infinite format holocron was released for the first time, which was around the time of Convergence coming out. But the balance of the Force on the Infinite list is excessive. And
it's a lot.
So for a lot of the players who have been around for a long time, who've been playing this game since day one, was actually a welcome list of cards. It is a welcome because they didn't balance them up; they balanced them down. So they made cards that were that are just impractical in the current setting because the newer characters are so much more powerful. Made them easier to pair up, right? So Palpatine Elite before was 28 points. Now he's 26. Allows you room for either a 4-point non-dice character or a better plot to go with them. Making cards like IG-88 playable, making Chirrut and Baze an elite pairing that you can have together, which was not possible before.
Right. But you still can't do Obi-Wan and Qui.
Well,
there's 27 cards on here, and they still didn't change that.
I counted.
I did while you were talking. Yeah, I mean, there's some welcome changes to this, but again, that's a lot. If you're a new player, you may not want to spend Infinite first. Just because you might have picked up some old cards from somebody who was selling them kind of cheap, you may want to get your feet wet in a couple of other formats, because there's a lot of, you got to go look at these point values, because who you put together, there may be better possibilities. Yeah. Now, again, am I going to sit with this across the table whenever I play somebody in Infinite and see if their characters match? No.
Now, if this list particular is intimidating, you could go to SW Destiny DB to build your deck, because all of their point values will update based on the format you choose for your deck. So that would be kind of a way to introduce yourself to this situation. And I've
never gotten into, I've struggled with that, and I don't know why. If I need to stare at the card in my hand. I've never been able to build a deck on, and it's a great tool. My brain just is like, nope, don't get it. Don't understand. I get it. I get how to work it, but I can't start a deck from scratch there.
It's hard. Yeah, you need to see them all laid out in the interactions for sure.
I gotta flip through the binder, and it's because I'm old.
Surprisingly, and I think restricted list was helpful for standard and trilogy because it was able to break up those combos. But you almost wonder, they came up with a restricted list and said, this is perfect for Infinite. Because now they can, this is a great way for them to start balancing things out, right? So you have the 4 that we've talked about so far, C-3PO Military Camp, Order 66, and Rebel Trader. They went back into the reaches, and they added Retreat and Hyperspace Jump from Awakenings.
Which is smart.
And they also added Military Camp. They added Mean Streets from Convergence, which has some negative interactions with some of the older cards. So, again, I think this is kind of teetering on, is this list getting a little too long? To say that if I have Hyperspace Jump in my deck, I can't have any of these other cards. What does Hyperspace Jump and C-3PO have to do with each other?
Somebody may find something, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head that would
prevent Hyperspace Jump and C-3PO from being a deadly quote-unquote combo. So,
Although Mike Ohio Hill said he played against Hyperspace Jump, Mean Streets, Planetary Uprising deck at Origins and Infinite, and it was outrageous. That sounds terrible.
Yeah, and of course the restricted list is trying to trying to mitigate this Hyperspace Jump Mean Street combo. But
yeah, because they have to. I mean, they have to give some attention to Infinite, or it will just, like you said, it'll be the wild, wild west out there, and it will not be a player experience because of some of these combos that either rotated out, so we don't have to worry about it anymore, or whatever. But yeah.
And for those who haven't, really looked at the Infinite holocron, it is the longest. It's the only one that's not just one page. It's actually 3 pages long. It's got a full page of erratas. It's all the erratas we've seen thus far. It was very interesting that they went and errated a non-standard card. We talked about in the rules reference too that Aftermath got hit because of some of the negative interactions it can have in Infinite format. And I'm assuming that people are using this particular card to really generate some resources, or it has the potential to with the new cards that are coming out. So kind of neat to see them. They are actually paying attention to this format to some degree, and I think they're trying to make it.
Because we just weren't sure at first. It was a whole new thing, yeah.
And then Kim's favorite page of the entire holocron update is
ridiculous.
How many on here? I don't even care. Kim's gonna start counting. They went back to Awakenings and started subtyping everyone. The Awakenings Admiral Akbar is now a leader. Like the concept of leader wasn't even a thing in Jeremy's. It wasn't even Jeremy Lucas's mind back then. Which goes to show that Destiny originally was never intended to be kind of the major competitive card game for them. I'm sure when Destiny came out that it was like a fun side game, and they were still going to keep up with the Star Wars LCG, and then Destiny just kind of took their market by storm, which means that Jeremy's kind of in the situation to have to go back and I don't want to say fix the old sets, but make them relevant in the current state of the game is really what this entire page is about.
83-ish.
83-ish.
I counted quick, so I could be off by 1 or 2.
80 plus or minus 5.
That's a lot, man.
That's a lot.
That's a lot down
and there are subtypes on here that aren't even being used right now, right? We're not talking about pilots, really. We're not talking about we're not talking about wikis. We're not talking about Dard.
There's really not a lot of witch happening, right? Inquisitor, witch. There's nothing much really pairing up with them that I think.
Yeah, it's interesting that the Grand Inquisitor became an Inquisitor. Like, how is that?
How did they figure those two out?
Right, I know, right? Even all the Rebels characters are Spectres, right? Because they were Spectre 1, Spectre 5, and each of them is a Spectre. But we're not referencing that subtype, so I'm really curious to see, is Jeremy preparing for the potential, or is he giving himself that option in the future? I don't know.
There's just a lot going on that. Just a lot.
The original action cheating Rey is a scavenger. Like, how that could be relevant in the current. Sorry, scavenger, scoundrel, different things. But
yeah, I thought there's a couple other, maybe not. Maybe you're
the original
right.
Maz is a scoundrel. Harrison Duel, a leader pilot Spectre. So they haven't really done much with Rebels recently, but will Spectre become a thing? I don't know.
Well, and at that point, you're going to have to either reprint these cards or come up with new ones, because they probably aren't going to be viable. Because a lot of these cards are old enough that they're not even in standard. So are you going to just release cards that only impact Infinite? That just seems backwards. To me, standards should be the main focus.
Right.
Followed by Trilogy, followed by Infinite. That just seems like what the hierarchy should.
Totally agree. Infinite is really a way to try and retain value for the old cards and the old sets.
And I'm sure they've taken I don't know if they had anything like that in their other. I didn't play the card game, and I didn't play Netrunner, so I don't know if they had, or that it was around long enough to have anything like that.
No.
So I just assumed they were taking a page out of Magic the Gathering, because it runs multiple formats that you have.
Right, because
the
LCGs didn't have a rotation.
Their version of Infinite is the most challenging to even try to be competitive in, because Magic's been around for a lot. But
right.
And the people who didn't sell their cards when they became adults are doing much better than those that did.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's really quite exciting what they've done with this particular set of updates for the holocrons. Restricted list. I think, we did pose the question over to the Hangout, and everybody seems pretty pleased with it as a solution. I don't think it's perfect, but yeah. But remember when Jeremy was talking about, we were talking about different types of decks, and there was a period of time in the meta where decks were either this or that. Mm-hmm. And he really wanted to push.
Absolutely.
He wanted to push control decks and combo decks and mill, and he wanted to make sure all these different types are viable. And I think restricted list is to say, here's the first time combo decks have that ability to do something, and we may have actually pushed the limit a little bit too far in some of these combination of cards. So we're not going to errata them because they're inherently not bad cards. They just have a negative interaction with another card that exists. So really kind of a neat, smooth way to change, to adjust this meta to help fix things. And I believe, the big thing is they said this is effective immediately. And that's because we've got the Continentals right around the corner. They've got 3 weeks to not only get Spark of Hope under their belt, but Spark of Hope with these changes, because they've all been play testing the spoilers for a month.
Yeah, without
which is almost kind of, it's kind of, I almost would imagine the guys at FFG are like, ha ha ha.
A little bit. I mean, although they created their own problem. Because if they send the product out and a store breaks street date and shares all the cards, that's not on the content creators or the. I'm just saying.
I still need a smoke box icon for the stream. But
I mean, it is. But you're right, because it's aha! You thought you had this figured out. And they throw a little curveball in there,
right?
Because you can never say for sure when a holo. I mean, you just don't know. There's no warning when a hologram's going to come out.
Not to most of us, that's for sure. So let's go ahead and jump in and discuss the answers to last week's question.
There can be no mistakes this time.
So we wanted to know which you were most excited about last week for Spark of Hope. And a lot of good answers over here. Although this makes me giggle. Mike Ohio Hill, you use some of the greatest phrasing. The new Kylo and the new Rey are neat, and I love that he is bringing neat back. Obviously, they're cool together, but they could be as cool. They could be cool as separate characters too. Totally agree.
Mm-hmm. Joshua Levy, I'm excited to see Grand Moff make a comeback with a new red card that lets you play it on anyone and for one cheaper.
That's smart. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Sutterth, I'm pumped about Holdo and Admiral. Yeah, I think Admiral could be fun. Droids as playable characters are great too, and will finally let my kiddos play Luke with his buddy R2. I am thrilled to see R2 and I'm thrilled to see them as actors. From a thematic standpoint, that was totally deserving.
Mm-hmm. Another one of our writers, Cecil, says looking forward to the 3PO R2 decks and seeing if they are viable, which I believe they are proving to be quite fearsome, actually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to determine who's you're laughing at this point, because both are kind of funny.
Yes. Derek Bertram is looking to do an Admiral Vader, so adding the Admiral upgrade to Vader, which is quite an interesting idea.
He also added drool.
Oh, yes.
Maybe the funniest answer of the week is good old Parker Simpson says, maybe Yoda or something. Just kidding, Ewoks. Because
Rock it out, yeah.
You don't have to be that familiar with Parker, I think, to know his love of Ewoks. Very similar to our good old Jason Bramsey.
I do like Ewoks.
They love them some creepy Care Bears.
That we do. Pete says
scarier every picture I see, man.
Pete says the return of thematic aggro.
Nice.
And Jim Goss says Han, his stuff, and the bounty hunter. So like Han and all of his thematic upgrades.
Yay!
Yeah, and the new bounty hunters I do like.
Han.
I really want to do a bounty deck. I'm going to get one put together eventually.
I think that would be a fun build.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I think that would be a fun build.
And then lastly, Bravin says
I missed
Admiral.
That one.
Yeah, sorry.
My apologies.
I didn't put another line break, so that
You're totally fine. I may have scrolled a little and I missed that.
So, seems like there's a lot of excitement for the set.
Yeah, I think people are, and it never had, I guess, a plus side. Convergence. Nobody ever was like, all right, we're tired of this set. We're ready for the next set. Bring on something new and exciting. That didn't happen this time.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious as to what the time will that extend the time frame? Will we have a longer lull between this set and the next?
Yeah, I mean, it almost feels like we've talked about what's the cycle for the game, what's the ideal, and the ideal would be.
We have no idea.
The ideal, I think, would be for Worlds to be at the end of a block. So, but Worlds is in October. We're currently in July. Will they release the third set of this block before Worlds? And if they do, it's either going to be released real quick, or it's going to be released, really close to Worlds, which isn't really enough time for people to play test it.
Oh yes, that's true, because that's October. My brain hadn't even gone there yet. Because, so we're looking at July, August, September. I can't imagine. Yeah, that's only 3 months. It'll be after Worlds.
My guess
just
is
in time for Christmas.
They'll use Worlds as a jumping off point for the next set, probably. And that's not bad. I mean, Worlds last time was only 4 sets, right? I think Legacies was fairly new. So going into Worlds this time will be 5 sets. Maybe they'll be able to get it into 6 sets for the next one if they adjust their release cycle accordingly. But I think
they'll adjust it, and they'll adjust it a different way, and then they'll adjust another way.
Well, remember, this is the last year that Worlds is public, right? After this, you have to have your own invite.
Right.
So
you have to be invited. I wonder if they'll send it so if Hogwarts sends their letters with owls, what will FFG... That should be our question of the week. What will FFG send their invitations?
Is it bad when I started talking about being invited? I was thinking about owls before you even said it.
See, this is why we do a show together, Jason.
This is why we do a show together. Anyways, everyone, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight.
Sorry for what I learned was a jackhammer in the background. Jackhammer. That's what was happening back there.
If you're watching...
I can't make this stuff up.
If you're watching live, subscribe with your Amazon Prime subscription. It is free for you, 1 channel a month, and it really helps keep this content going. On YouTube, like, subscribe, hit the notification icon. Podcast, please review on your favorite podcasting app. Let them know if you like the show or not. Let us know if you don't, and we'll try and change it or not. Thank you so much to Matthew Scott for keeping us honest most of the time, and getting everything out on the Facebook page. Thank you all our patrons. If you have the means and want to contribute to keep this channel running, for just $1 a month, you can come join us over the Hangout, find out all the things that we're doing before anybody else does. $5 and $15 will get you gifts sent to you monthly
by me, and signed, sealed, and delivered by yours truly. I might let the dog lick the envelopes this time.
Wow. And then, of course, if you have an iOS device and you're looking for quick ways of getting the best price singles on the net, we are supporting, I want to say, 12 different stores on the Chance Cube Price Watch app, and you can find the cheapest singles, help value your trades, and we're continuing to try to improve it as we find the time. And I promise an Android app is in the pipeline. They're just two very different things, and I'm learning all this from scratch. So please be patient. Thank you.
We're getting there.
But
in the meantime, you can still use the
website.
There is still our website is still there with newly redesigned websites. Thanks to Jason. Looks really cute. But the Price Watch is out there as well. So if you do have an Android phone, you can still access that. It's not as cool and searchable, but it's there. And so in its former glory of a spreadsheet, like it's what you used to use all the time. So it's still there.
You used to use it all the time. It's still there. All the dice cards that you want to see. And of course, our website's got all our great new bloggers on there. So Cecil and Matt and Mike and Wade and Chris and Parker, all contributing to that site. So really appreciate all of their support. And
Absolutely.
They bring a great energy to the Chansky family that I believe
great group of kids.
is awesome. I believe is awesome. Yes. So head over to our Facebook page, pinned to the top. We are asking next week, what single card from Spark of Hope is your early favorite? And with that,
that's a good question.
We bid you adieu, and we'll come up with something to talk about next week.
This has been The Chance Cube, a Star Wars Destiny podcast, a non-profit organization dedicated to building community through gaming. Visit our website for all things Star Wars Destiny, including our Price Watch, Meta Tracker, and latest articles from the Chance Cube family. Find our latest videos on YouTube, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and visit us at patreon.com/thechancecube. Your patronage allows us to grow this program and help us give back to the gaming community by sponsoring events, giveaways, and supporting our own community building initiatives. This is Mike Hill, the voice of the Chance Cube. Thanks for listening. The Chance Cube is not affiliated with Fantasy Flight Games, Lucasfilms, or the Walt Disney Company.